Howdy, y'all. Welcome to the return of my Star Wars Expanded Universe book club, where we are finally going to talk about the conclusion to the epic Thrawn Trilogy, The Last Command. This is a fantastic book, and I know I'm a little late on making this video. A lot of stuff going on. I took my time with this book for two reasons, mainly. One, it had been over 20 years since I read this book. I wanted to take my time because I honestly had forgotten a lot of the little details that led up to the big points that I always remembered. And including a couple of points, I had forgotten a couple of key issues within the big story plot points. So this was fun. It was almost like reading a whole new book again because it had been so long since I'd read it. Two, a lot of stuff going on with the channel. Didn't quite have time to always be relaxed. Didn't quite have time to fit this into my schedule. So it really had to take its time, had to run its course. But here we are, The Last Command, the conclusion to the Thrawn Trilogy, the trilogy that reignited a passion for Star Wars in the early 90s. Let's get to this. I'm not going to try to stay on target. Going to try to go through the story itself quickly because I really want to spend more time talking about how this was a masterful Star Wars story told by one Timothy Zahn, how everything he did through 3 books led to all the glorious action and events in this final volume of this trilogy. Okay, it has been a month since the events of Dark Force Rising. Thrawn controls the Katana fleet, manned by hundreds of thousands of clones being churned out by the Mount Tantus cloning facility on Wayland. So Thrawn is in the driver's seat. He has the power, and he's laying traps all over the place for the fledgling New Republic, and they're falling into it one after another. Even our heroes, Luke Skywalker and Talon Karrde, our new gray area hero, they fall into the trap of trying to track the false pipeline of clones being spread out throughout the galaxy. This leads Talon Karrde to try to put together a loose alliance of the galaxy smugglers, realizing that while he doesn't fully want to support the New Republic, he realizes that in the end, the Empire, Thrawn, will be bad for business and for his own personal health and everybody's health. We'll come back to Karrde's arc in a moment. Luke gets a feeling in the Force. He realizes he needs to get back to Coruscant. Why? Because Mara has woken up. She's been in a chemically induced coma for the past month while she's been healing from her from being basically spaced at the end of Dark Force Rising during the battle for the remainder of the Katana fleet. She's had her brain fixed, healed. She's all better now, but she wakes up, but she's under suspicion as being discovered that she had connections to the Empire, being the Emperor's hand. Meanwhile, Leia goes into labor. And Jason and Jaina arrive on the scene. But that is only the herald of something bad, because that only spurs Juros C'baoth to move into his final personal phase, the insane clone Jedi Master. He moves to his own final phase. He's convinced he is the new Emperor. He thinks everybody is his minion to do as he must please. And he wants to destroy Thrawn, but he knows he has to move to another location. So he breaks away from the main fleet and returns to Mount Tantus on Wayland to begin his own plans, to separate from Thrawn's. And we'll, of course, come back to that after a little while. So the twins are born, but Thrawn needs to capture them. First to try and appease C'baoth, but then for his own personal reasons as well, to neutralize Leia. What happens is that Hit Squad is launched. Imperial Hit Squad enters the Imperial Palace, and only through the help of Mara Jade and Garm Beliblis and Lando and Chewie do they successfully defend Leia from the attack. I mean, Han's up there too, but him and Leia are basically bottlenecked in there with a couple of Nogri bodyguards as well. Eventually, it fails though, but Thrawn's backup plan to lay blame on Mara for the assault, so Mara gets temporarily imprisoned. Meanwhile, Luke Luke sensed this trouble coming and tried to get back, but because of damage to his X-Wing, he had to make a stopover, made a quick little stopover on Hanagar, the Nogri homeworld, and has a great little interaction with the Nogri there, and they call, instead of calling him, like they call Leia Lady Vader, they just call him Son of Vader. But it's a great little interaction, and it opens Luke's eyes on how the Nogri's homeworld is doomed, and how he wishes he had a better solution to helping them. And it opens his eyes about basically everything in the galaxy. It's not always going to be so easy, and that's just part of Luke's arc in all of this. So eventually, Luke makes it back to Coruscant. Everybody's trying to pick up the pieces after the Imperial assault. Everybody's still massively worried about the unknown Delta source, Thrawn's spy in Coruscant, in the Imperial Palace, that seems to somehow know everything of what they're doing. So the heroes, our heroes, attempt to circumvent it. They have a plan. They realize quickly that the clones must be coming from someplace. We don't know where, we don't know how. They figured out it has to come someplace, but then they realize Mara might know where it's coming from. After a nice little plan to break out Mara, they convince Mara to come with them, and we have a hero strike team heading to Wayland. Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, Lando Calrissian, Chewbacca, and Mara Jade, with 3PO and R2 in tow. They head off on the Falcon to try and cut off the clone supply, realizing that is the biggest threat to everything. Because the clones, they'll have more stormtroopers, more crew. Gotta stop it. Meanwhile, Thrawn has set the stage for his biggest trap to lure the New Republic into everything, into an all-or-nothing destructive battle. Thrawn is using the cloaking technology that he took from Mount Tantus to basically build cloaking generators around asteroids. He farms 22 asteroids and then launches an assault on Coruscant and fires them off in there, but does it in a way that it looks like he fired over 200 cloaked asteroids as opposed to just 22. So he essentially, after what Zahn called in these books a hit and fade run, goes in there, blitzes, launches these asteroids as basically cloaked siege weapons that could crash into anything or crash into the planet at any time. Basically cuts off Coruscant, because then they have to leave the planetary shield up. Otherwise, I mean, an asteroid, that's a cataclysmic event when it hits a planet. Now, the New Republic figures out how to break it down, but they're still convinced that even though they get all 22, they don't know that it's only been 22. They still think there's over 200 floating around in orbit on Coruscant. So they have an idea. They have to get a particular piece of technology that would allow them to universally scan local space around the planet and then pinpoint everything. That was Thrawn's plan. That was Thrawn's plan, to lure them to the Tangreen system, for one. But then the New Republic says, oh, it's an obvious trap. Let's do what they don't think. Let's go balls to the wall, attack on the Imperial shipyards at Bilbringi. Akbar, General Madine, they come up with an idea. To attack it. Problem is, this is Thrawn we're dealing with. Thrawn sees right through it. He sees right through it, and he lays a second trap at Bilbringi. Brings all the Imperial ships there. Brings the full might of his new armada. Well, just about the full might of the new armada, ready to just crush the New Republic. And the New Republic, they walk right into it. Meanwhile, Talon Karrde has been trying to hold together his alliance of smugglers, and through some betrayal and this and that, we'll skip over most of that because it's interesting, but not as interesting as the final result is that he manages to hold them together, and they decide to try and steal the same piece of technology that the Republic wants to save Coruscant. Problem is, they fall for the Republic's ruse that they're going to attack Tangreen, but instead they're going to Bilbringi. So everybody is going to Bilbringi except Talon Karrde. Talon Karrde briefly stops over on Coruscant because he wants to pick up Mara, because he's loyal. She's been there. He thinks she's locked up and falsely imprisoned for being an Imperial spy. Problem is, Mara has gone off with Luke and Han and Lando on their adventure to Wayland. So, problem is, though, Leia has had a forced premonition that if she does not get to Wayland, there's going to be a massive problem. And you see that she is right. Leia's presence makes the difference in the final battle in Mount Tantus. Leia convinces Card to come with to take the Talon card and take her and take who else was with her? I think it was Leia and some Nogri to go to Mount Tantus and save her family and her friends. Meanwhile, okay, so now here's everything. Here's the big play of what's going on. You have the Battle of Bill Bringy is all set up. Thrawn has pulled everybody into his trap there. Strike team lands on Wayland. They have to. This all happens over a 2-week period, 14 days, as the strike team on Wayland fights their way through harsh environment with creatures, monsters, salty natives. With the help of apparently a Nogri strike team, it also landed there as well. They were helping out on Leia's orders. Beautiful thing is, oh, sorry, I forgot about Delta Source. Everything hinges on the success of the New Republic ruse because they find the Delta Source. They discover that the Delta Source is basically a sound connected to basically a sound transmitter connected to a bunch of plants in the courtyard outside the conference rooms in the Imperial Palace. And Leia figures it out. It's all Leia. Leia figures it out. She puts all the pieces together herself, thanks to help from Ghent and stuff like that. But she puts together, and eventually they do discover it. So this room, they had these sensors attached to these trees that picked up sound waves or touch whenever somebody walked by it, and then translate and send it out. It was all over the place in there. So they do stop Delta Source finally, which is why Bill Bringy goes over. But then, as I said, Thrawn sees through. So back to Wayland. I'm heading towards Mount Tantus. Our intrepid strike team: Luke, Han, Mara, Lando, Chewie, R2, 3PO, and some Nogri. They make friends with the natives. They eventually pull off their initial attack because at the same time, Sabaoth has arrived on Wayland, and he's finished his own maniacal, insane plans of basically mass force control. He realizes he's developed a force technique that allows him to implant his own personality or direct control into anybody. And he's taunting Luke and Leia, but when he arrives at Mount Tantus, he's immediately cut off because we discovered that Mount Tantus, there are thousands of Isla Miri inside the facility. Mainly they're put around the clones to keep the clones from imprinting anything in the Force. I know it's a little out there, but like that was the reasoning they did for cloning. Remember, Timothy Zahn was not working with George Lucas's Clone Wars plans because George hadn't fully fleshed it out yet in 91, 92, and 93. So he did the best he could. Knowing that the Isla Miri are all over the place in Mount Tantus, the strike team still intends to go in there. And on the way there, I forgot to mention, Luke had been sort of retraining Mara in the basics of Jedi techniques and lightsaber practice, which, of course, is going to come in handy. Our strike team infiltrates because Sabaoth's thralls launch an attack, which at the same time allows our strike team to get in. All kinds of chaos going on. And eventually, events lead to the Isla Miri being destroyed. They get killed around all the cloning facilities, which allows the Force to sweep back in. At this point, Lando and Chewie are trying to blow up the cloning facility while Luke and Mara tried to go after the control room in the Emperor's throne room at the top of Mount Tantus for initiating a mountain-wide destruction signal. But when they realize it's a trap, Han tries to get to them. Meanwhile, at the same time, as all these events are happening, as the confrontation begins in Mount Tantus, Leia and Card arrive, and they get in there just in time, and they infiltrate as well, with little help from Card and his Vorkser. They find their way up there, and they eventually meet up with the strike team at various points. What happens in the throne room? They discover Sabaoth. Sabaoth gives this massive, insane speech about control, about everybody's going to be his apprentice, blah, blah, blah. Wants to make Mara kneel before him. And Mara is scared to death of him. She doesn't want to be under anybody else's control because we're going to talk about Mara because this whole book is basically fueled by Mara. That's the thing. This whole book is fueled by Mara. That's what it's called, The Last Command, because of her. We'll get to that in a moment as I break down why this book works as Star Wars and why it was the catalyst for everything and why it was so great. Sabaoth reveals that he's cloned Luke. He cloned Luke because the Emperor, again, here's the actual lore that Disney Star Wars pillaged, stole, and made stupid. The Emperor retrieved Luke's hand and Anakin's lightsaber from Bespin and stored it in Mount Tantus. Sabaoth found it and cloned himself a Luke, calling it Luke, and it's armed with Anakin's lightsaber. Problem is, now they create this thing in the book here about how two same personalities, the real and the clone, can't operate, and especially if they're force sensitive, it creates a kind of a buzzing suppression altering effect on Luke. So the Luke clone goes on the offensive under Sabaoth's control. Sabaoth is basically controlling it, and Luke tries to fight it, but he's on the defensive because he's being weakened by this buzzing thing. And I had forgotten. I kept thinking to myself all the years, man, why did Luke have so much trouble dueling his clone? I couldn't remember. Well, the reason was that this force, basically like a force rebound effect, was dampening Luke's abilities, and he could basically only play on the defensive. And then it gets worse when Leia and Han bust into the party with Card, and Sabaoth he flips out and basically does a force storm of sorts, a telekinetic force storm, and starts to bring the whole throne room down on everybody. And Luke is trying to defend Mara. Leia tries to attack with her lightsaber, gets knocked down, knocked out. Han is just trying to defend Leia as well. It's chaos in there. Meanwhile, the whole time, and now let's talk about Mara for a second. This whole thing, Mara, through this book, evolves in realizing that she was a pawn of Palpatine all her life because he basically crafted things and had her see things a certain way, especially when she discovers that the image that he forced upon her about Vader and Luke taking him out in the Death Star 2 throne room, it was altered. She didn't know the real story. And in parting to that, he implanted his last command, a last imperative, a force compulsion, as it were, that she had to kill Luke Skywalker. You know, for 3 books, "You must kill Luke Skywalker" has been thundering in her brain for 3 books now. And you see where this is going. If you understand, you can see where this is going here. And she realized she doesn't want to because she realized that there's more to life than being controlled, that there's more to the universe than being a pawn, that the Force is there and she can feel and touch it. And and the teachings of the Jedi are starting to affect her. And finally, during the battle there, Luke is being pressed, and he has a plan. I mean, Luke has a plan to try and lure the clone into a situation, but it's not working because Sabaoth is still in control. What happens though is Mara, at the last second, gets involved. She manages to force yoink Leia's lightsaber that had been discarded during the battle, gets her hands on it. And after Luke had successfully lured the clone into a trap explosion that forced the clone to back off and gave Mara a window to attack Sabaoth, who is completely surprised at this turn of events, the clone turns to try and block her path, and "You must kill Luke Skywalker! You must kill Luke Skywalker!" She kills a Luke Skywalker. Mara, with her fledgling training, getting back to use with the lightsaber, the hurt clone, the startled Sabaoth, who is having trouble controlling things now. Mara gets her shot in. She kills the clone. She fulfills the Emperor's last command and has freed herself once and for all from his control. Well, Sabaoth has a meltdown, and the entire he does a force storm or force everything, and in the end, they take him out. They take him out. Mara does what Mara does. She does her role, and she kills him. Mara kills him, takes him out, and that's the first half of the major battle, because Timothy Zahn does what Star Wars was supposed to do. He gives you the metaphysical battle, the force battle, but then he gives you the epic space battle. Thrawn pulled everybody into his trap at Bilbringi. Everybody. And the Imperial fleet is pounding Akbar's fleet. Pounding them. Even Card's smugglers who are there, they try to help a little bit, and it doesn't help much. But it's not enough. Thrawn is going to win. Except his arrogance overlooked one small key thing. The bridge is in his control. Pelion, all through the eyes of Pelion, Pelion's watching everything come to pass when suddenly, Rook, Thrawn's personal Nogri bodyguard, turns on his master. Because the Nogri have been planning this for months, waiting for their opportunity to take revenge for the Empire enslaving them. I'm going to read the moment it happens. Because Thrawn has just received information that Wayland is lost. The cloning facilities are gone. There was a whisper of movement, and he was gone. Pelion looking at Rook. Still gasping, struggling. Pelion had been chopped in the neck by Rook. Struggling against the inertia of his stunned muscles, Pelion fought to get his hand up to his command board. With one final effort, he made it, trying twice before he was able to hit the emergency alert. And as the wailing of the alarm cut through the noise of the Star Destroyer battle, he finally managed to turn his head. Thrawn was sitting upright in his chair, his face strangely calm. In the middle of his chest, a dark red stain was spreading across the spotless white of his Grand Admiral's uniform. Glittering in the center of the stain was the tip of Rook's assassin's knife. Thrawn caught his eye, and to Pelion's astonishment, the Grand Admiral smiled. "But," he whispered, "it was so artistically done." The smile faded, the glow in his eyes did likewise, and Thrawn, the last Grand Admiral, was gone. Thrawn had everything planned out perfectly based upon his theories of art. Gives you a window into the soul of a species that you can understand how they think, how they behave. But he didn't understand that his own treachery would destroy him, because Leia secretly turned the Nogri. He believed that the Nogri were forever under his thrall, under his control. And Leia wins everything. Leia's presence in all three books, and here in the second book and in this book, it's the actions of Leia that saves everything. And it's done well. Now we're going to talk about how this all works. It's done well. Actual storytelling, actual character development. Leia has spent 3 books growing as a Jedi novice. Won't say Padawan, because the Padawan wasn't a term yet. Say a novice in her training, yet trying to balance her career as a counselor of the New Republic, a government official. No, but also weighed down by her past and the past of her family, trying to fit everything together while pregnant with twins. But it's done well. She's not a Mary Sue. Leia fails multiple times. She almost loses multiple times. And she does fail sometimes in this series. But she's persistent, and she does everything for the love of her family and the love of the cause that she was working to create, to protect. Leia's actions saved everything because she believed in freedom. The Nogri ended Thrawn's reign because he had a blind spot. Though he thought that was the one thing that was always going to be under his control. Never crossed his mind that the Nogri might betray him. Maybe have you ever noticed in this entire book, and this is now we're going to dig into me. Ever notice that Thrawn never mentions looking at Nogri art? Never mentions looking at Nogri art. Maybe if he'd studied Nogri art, he would have seen that this betrayal might happen per his own rules. But he never bothered to, because in his arrogance, his single flaw, his arrogance that he was always going to be the smartest one in the room, that everything was always going to be under his control. Blind spot. And the Nogri took advantage, and the Nogri killed him. Rook killed him. Because Leia believed in freedom. And at the same time, Leia's desire to protect her family saved everybody. Leia's presence at Mount Tantus, because her lightsaber was there for Mara to snatch up, that was how they beat Sabaoth. That's how they win. They win because of Leia. It's kind of a mirror to, and this again, I don't have notes, writer's notes like I did with the Thrawn. Well, I'm sorry, with the Heir to the Empire book, but I bet when he was writing this, I'd wager heavily that Timothy Zahn wanted to have a mirror of when Luke had his own Force vision in Empire Strikes Back, and how if you watch Empire Strikes Back, Luke's actions when he leaves Dagobah to go to Bespin are basically futile. They don't help anybody. Leia, Chewie, Lando, Han, everything that plays out there would play out without Luke ever having been there. Would have all played out the same without him there. Maybe one exception. Maybe if Vader had been on the Executor the entire time instead of fighting Luke, maybe the others would not have escaped Bespin so easily. But that's a debate. That's a debate to be had. But here, Leia had her Force vision, and it led her. The Force led her to be in the right place at the right time. Now, of course, you could say Luke's Force vision led him there because he had to learn that Vader was his father, and therefore create the events of knowing that he would then try to save his father. That's the alternate reason of, yes, Luke's presence didn't help Han, Leia, and Lando and Chewie in Bespin, but his presence there, his encounter with Vader, created the story arc, created the impetus for him to save his father from the dark side. So you could say the Force still guided him there for a reason. Just like Leia was guided to Mount Tantus. Her presence, one single action, her lightsaber, allowed Mara to free herself from slavery. See the themes here. Freeing yourself from oppression. Freeing yourself from the rule of tyrants. Zahn does an excellent job of not only weaving it on a grand scale, but bringing it down to a personal level. And that is why the Thrawn Trilogy, as it's known, it's called the Thrawn Trilogy by fans. It's not its official title, it's just what we all call it. That's why it was such an effective catalyst to rekindle a passion for Star Wars. Because until then, Star Wars had been just floating on toy sales and a couple of cheesy video games, nothing major. And some crummy NES games, and then the Super Nintendo, the Super Star Wars series, had just started coming out around this time. It was not a juggernaut. Yes, George was a millionaire because of his toys, but it was just a happy cult nerd thing. But then the EU happened. Timothy Zahn recreated the feeling of Star Wars in this trilogy, and it connected with millions of people. And then George Lucas got the idea of, okay, let's keep this going. Oh, let's make video games. Let's make more things. Let's make more products, more merch, more everything. And suddenly it went from $1 million property to $1 billion property because ideas were given. Ideas were used and pushed and nurtured with George overlooking it all. The EU reignited a passion for everybody in Star Wars, and it went on for another 20 plus years. 28 years to be exact. This is why I love real Star Wars. These books You feel like you're in there. Timothy Zahn has said he wanted to invoke all the imagery, all the feelings, all the classic nostalgia stuff when he did this, yet give it the new flair. You get Mara, you get Card, you get Thrawn, you get Pelling, you get all these new characters, and they're alive. You feel like you're in Star Wars. By the end of this, you are fully involved and connected to Mara Jade. You feel for her, you understand her. Her final scene with Luke in the final chapter, where it's basically a bright future. You can feel she's the last point of view we have here with Luke on the roof, on a rooftop at the Imperial Palace, or on a balcony, whatever. And you get the feeling of hope, which is what the end of every Star Wars movie always wants to give you, that sense of hope that there is a bright future. Despite whatever dangers may be, there is a future out there. A future out there where the light side will always triumph, because good people want to keep working, striving towards good things. And you realize that, let's just talk about Luke for a minute, because everybody else has their arc, but Luke and Mara and Leia were kind of the big arcs. So let's just talk about Luke for a minute as we wind down. Luke's journey in all of this, and which is why he was so tempted by Sabaoth throughout all of these books for a while, was the idea of he's unsure what the future is going to bring as it concerns him being a teacher. He is the only true Jedi out there right now, and he's going to be a Jedi Master very soon. He's growing in strength and power and knowledge. I mean, you see here, he's able to teach Mara. She's angry at him. She's salty at him, but he's still able to impart knowledge to her during their Wayland expedition. And she's receptive. Luke is a good teacher. He's not Jake Skywalker. He's Luke Skywalker, who has hope, has feeling. Even to the very last moment, he still tries to save Sabaoth from his insanity. He is Luke Skywalker, the man who has hope for everybody, who looks for the good in you. He's not Jake Skywalker. That is one of the worst things Disney ever did, creating Jake Skywalker, the cynical, angry hermit who sees bad in everything and has no faith in humanity, no faith in the Force. Luke Skywalker has faith in the Force, but he's still unsure. And now going forward in the year, we're going to see him as our hero, one of our major heroes. He's still on the hero's journey. Luke's hero's journey is not over, because it's just moved to a new phase, and he's going to have his ups and downs as he tries to rebuild the Jedi Order in the coming years. It's a fantastic thing, and it's such a good story. So much awesome stuff, which leads me now to our next entry into the book club. Now we're taking a small detour. This one's only going to be very quick. It's very easy. Up next, the somewhat controversial, the somewhat always loved and hated Dark Empire. We are going to check out Dark Empire. 6 issues released by Dark Horse in the early 90s, after the Thrawn Trilogy, before the Jedi Academy Trilogy. Dark Empire. Easy to find online. Multiple free websites have it up to reading. It's very easy to find. We're going to give this about a week or so, and then I'm going to give you my book club review on Dark Empire before we move on to the Jedi Academy Trilogy. So I want to thank you for sitting through this discussion, review, whatever it is, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you are looking forward to our continued journey together through the Star Wars expanded universe. See you next time with Dark Empire. Thanks for watching, everyone. I don't do Facebook. I will never do Twitter. If you want to reach out to me, email me at therennerd@gmail.com. I'm on Getter now, @therennerd, the Geeks and Gamers forums under @ROAS, and you can also follow me on Odyssey @the Renaissance Nerd. Thanks again for watching. Take it easy.